Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Bjarne Asbøl. I come from this university, and together with two co-workers, Tamara Sliwa-Serenko and Lina Harder-Clemmensen, I have worked a bit on looking at course evaluations which are made on a regular basis by the students at this university. Actually, this is a very small fraction of a pretty large project which has to do with assessing evaluations and seeing what we can do about utilizing them in a better way, hopefully. So now to something seemingly completely different. This is an ad from the pharmacies, the national pharmacies in Denmark, Apoteket, and on their homepage you can find this, this thing about smoking. So this is a questionnaire that you can fill in, and I filled it in as you see there, and you can then test yourself. Now this is in Danish, so in order for you to understand this, I have tried to translate it into English, and it turns out that this is equivalent to the so-called Fagerström test for nicotine dependency. So what you have to do is you have to score the following questions. The scores are given in brackets. So the first question is, how soon after you wake up do you have your first cigarette? A, within 5 minutes. B, within 6 to 30 minutes. C, within 31 to 60 minutes. And D, after 1 hour. Okay, and depending on what you choose, you receive a score of 0, 1, 2, 3. Then you go on to the next question. Do you find it difficult to refrain from smoking in places where it is forbidden? For instance, in church, in the library, the cinema, etc. Yes gives you a score of 1, no gives you a score of 0, and so on. So let's see, let's fill this in. So for instance, I might choose that I have a craving for my first cigarette, not 5 minutes after I wake up, but from 6 to half an hour, 6 minutes to half an hour. And yes, I certainly do find it difficult to refrain from smoking on Sunday morning when I'm attending the church. And I don't really hate giving up the first one in the morning, but I would hate giving up the others, and so on. So this gives me a number of points I can count. I get me a 2 here, a 1 here, a 1 here, and a 1 here. So this gives me 4 to 6 points, which is called a moderate smoker in this context. So 0 to 4 would become a low, 4 to 6 moderate, 7 to 10 points gives me a high score. And then the homepage tells me that I'm a moderate smoker. I'm not necessarily extremely dependent on nicotine, and then they tell me how I could help myself by taking some nicotine in a Band-Aid type thing. And of course, this is a way of selling more of that stuff. Now, why did I tell you this? Well, this is half of what I want to tell you today. The other half comes from the other example here. Let's imagine that we had a similar questionnaire which was on alcohol. And we then knew that I had answered both the questionnaire on smoking and the questionnaire on alcohol. Then I would somehow be able to relate these two questionnaires. And before, there was just one outcome. Was I a low, a moderate, or a high level smoker? Here there is a more complicated outcome because there are two sets of variables which are related to one another. So this is what we're actually after. What is the relationship between alcohol and smoking? I took that picture. I have to say, since we've been recorded, I took that off the net, and it's probably copyrighted and so on. So please excuse me for that. At this university, we have a system which is based on the university intranet, and all the students are asked to evaluate on a standardized questionnaire all courses that they are following, just before the end of the semester, usually about a week before the end of the semester. It is called CampusNet and has been developed here at this university and is used at a few universities in Denmark and possibly also some abroad, which I do not know about. It's of course intended as a quality monitoring tool, first and foremost for the teachers themselves, so that they can develop their courses and teaching, also for the departmental study boards and for the department management and also for the university management. So all these bodies actually get to see the result of the evaluation. And this has been in existence for more than 10 years. I think we can safely say that the system has given rise to positive feedback, so that we have been able to develop our curriculum and our teaching and learning abilities at the university. So this is a continuous effort to try to increase the quality of teaching. The questionnaire consists of 3 different forms. One, Form A, has to do with the course itself. So it contains several questions which are intended to assess what is good and what is bad about the course. There's another form which is addressing the teacher and his or her ability, and also teaching assistants and so on. And then there's a free form C, where you can come with more detailed verbal, not verbal, but qualitative answers in one of 3 categories. What went well, what did not go so well, and which suggestions for improvement do you have? There are a few other twists to this, but this is basically what we have. So the results of this kind of questionnaire are often depicted in this way, and this is the way the teachers and the departmental study boards and so on will usually have access to them. So you will look at the questions and look at histograms or percentages of how the students scored. And here's a close-up on a couple of the questions from my own course in multivariate statistics. So one of the questions is, I think I'm learning a lot in this course, and quite a few luckily thought that they were, but there are still a few who strongly disagree. And I think the teaching method encourages my active participation. That's a bit more so-so. I think the teaching material is good, no high scores, and quite a varied response down here. Okay, so the question is, can we do better than this? Can we actually try to utilize the information that we get out of this in a better way? And of course, one obvious thing to think of is to perhaps make a standardized score, one number on what is going on around this course and what is going on around this particular teacher. And can we score them and rank them in different ways? And that's been tried either by performing averages of scores of selected questions or making aggregations of all questions in more or less complicated, sometimes non-linear ways. From my point of view, as a data analyst, I like to let data speak for themselves or by itself. So I would consider using a slightly different approach. And the core thing is that the data, at least in our system, is saved by student. I don't know who the student is. That is anonymous to me. There's a 20-digit hexadecimal code which tells me this is student something or other, but I can't relate it to anything. I can just use it for matching purposes, which is interesting because this means that I can match what a student assessed in one course to what the same student assessed in another course. I can even match it to which grade they got, and we wrote a paper about that earlier on. But in this case, we need to match between courses. So this is what a particular student, we can call him or her number 25, ranked on or assessed on these different questions in Form A, and what he or she wrote in the free form, Form C. Back to what we actually want to talk about. That is the CDIO content. At our department, we have two courses which are linked in a way. The students are supposed to, they don't have to, but they're supposed to take these courses in parallel, and together they form the CDIO concept, roughly speaking. So as you see here, you can see from the taxonomy, understand number representation, use loops and branches, understand classes and so on, use simple UML, use, explain, group work to design, use time and activity planning tools. And over here for the other course, plan, control, carry out, describe roles in group work, carry out required specifications, design of programming process, develop programming design, use configuration management tools, develop documentation, plan, carry out, document, evaluate own and others' work, prepare report documentation. So you can see that this is a pair of courses at the introductory level, say the first few semesters of a study, and that they together fit more or less the CDIO concept. So the content of these courses is designed to fit the CDIO content. And we set forward the hypothesis, okay, if we can match students and their answers to these questionnaires, perhaps we can assess which answers they are giving to the evaluation in the first course to other answers in the second course somehow. We would have liked to have done this for one particular year. However, from a pretty large cohort of students, around 75 to 100 students, not very many of them tend to assess. There's no mandatory assessment here at DTU, so it's your own free will if you want to assess or not the course. And in this particular case, the first course, out of the 75, only about a third of them evaluated. For the second course, out of about 90, only about a third of them evaluated. And of course, when it gets to matching the two, then out of the 23 and 35, the actual number who actually participated in both courses and evaluated both courses is going to be pretty low. So down for 1 year, we were down to about 14 answers, which is not enough to build any sensible statistics on. So we had to include several years, which gives other problems because there might be changes in the course between years. There might be other teachers and so on, and there's a tendency that course evaluations and teacher evaluations are mixed to a certain extent. So if a teacher is particularly popular, this reflects both on the teacher evaluation and on the course evaluation, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, we collected 14, 14, and 5 answers from 2008, 9, and 10 respectively. The questions that we looked at were only from Form A, so this has only something to do with the course and nothing, or should not have anything to do with the teacher. But as I said before, there's a sort of a carryover effect between the course and teacher. So there's a slight what was I going to say? There's a dependency there. Okay, so the questions that we're looking at consider disagreement to agreement, except for 2 questions which, for which 1 and 5 is actually negative and 3 is positive. These 2 questions down here, which have to do with the performance in working hours, and the prerequisites. Otherwise, it's learning, active participation, material, communication in general, I think. These are the numbers that correspond to the sample descriptive statistics for all years, and as you can see, there is a general tendency that one course scores higher than the other course. Sorry. How do we get back? We do so like that. And then we try to work out, is there actually a difference between years? And this dependency turns out to be quite significant. So this means, to make a long story short, which I must because I'm running out of time, it means that we have to adjust for year. How I did that, I can explain to you during the lunch break if you're interested. Now comes the method. It's so-called canonical correlations. And canonical correlations will take variables on one side. Say this was the form A from the first course, and this is the form A variables, just two of them from the second course. Make a linear combination of the first set and another linear combination of the second set, which together are made in such a way that they give maximal correlation. This is canonical correlation coefficients. And in a reduced set, which is what we actually can understand and assess, it turns out that if we are looking at a student who thinks he or she is learning a lot, together with not receiving very much feedback, perhaps this is due to the teacher, or perhaps this is due to the student actually being extremely good at not needing feedback, and also for a student who thinks positively about the workload, then this correlates extremely well in the other course with respect to good material and also not very much feedback. How this is to be interpreted remains to be seen, and as said, the number of observations is not very large, so we should perhaps be careful here. So I'll just conclude by saying we have just scratched the surface, but this might be a possible way to try to assess the combination of courses. Thank you for your attention.